So, welcome to the Save the Extreme podcast for the week of October 18, 2020. I'm, of course, Josh Placer from Game Wisdom, and joining me is my co host, Shark from Nexus Games. How are you doing?
I'm doing great,
Now, we have our
along with
issue.
that kid knocking outside your window and the dogs and
Yeah,
everything else.
and the audio issues.
hmm
But,
All just waiting.
waiting exactly for 4:30 to start.
Exactly.
hmm
So if
But
you hadn't been late, you would have beat him here.
then they would interrupt the story in the middle of the talk.
There we go.
hmm I'm so. I plan so well that when I'm late, it means I plan perfectly to avoid the distractions.
Or maybe you planned it perfectly to get the distractions right at the start.
But it's great to talk with everybody for today. We have a discussion plan. We're going to be talking about genre conventions, or what is in a genre, that may just evolve into an hour-long rant. We'll see what happens when we get
But
to it.
it's definitely going to have some rants in there. It's going to have me ranting about RPGs, and I'm sure it's going to have Josh ranting about both Metrovanias and rogues. Well, speaking of rogues, what is a rogue?
Well, you have to buy my book to answer that one.
There goes a self-promotion plug.
But it's definitely great. We are in the middle of October. I'm surprised we are not seeing too many really standout horror games. There's a ton of indie horror games, and I have a few for the weird games segment. The one that possibly has potential is the DreadX Collection 3 is due out in 5 days. And we looked at the second one, which is basically a collection of indie games from small developers. And we do need to have that talk, I think, about micro games or, specifically small scale games and whether or not they can work as an individual idea or as a package compilation.
Was that the one with Cthulhu-chan in it?
Yes.
Hopefully Cthulhu-chan comes back for this next one.
I don't think so, but apparently there's probably going to be another dating game of some kind. So I'm sure somebody's going to be romancing somebody. We'll see what happens there. But in terms of Game Wisdom news week this week, we are approaching 6666 subscribers. So I guess I'll be extra metal at some point here.
Yeah, there you go.
And
after news on my side, we're redoing the font for the 1500th time.
Again, nobody has any complaints until you've actually finished it, of course.
Well, see, the thing was, when it was just black and everything, everyone's like, I really love the style. I really love everything about it. And it's yeah, but wait till you see it when it's done, and whenever I've added color and all this detail and whatnot to it, then I add all of that to it, and everybody's like, I hate it.
There you go.
Start over. It's like, what? We hate everything about it.
Of course.
We hate the black to it. You even recolor it back to black, and we hate it now. It's like, what?
Yeah. Again, always the joys of getting user feedback about a game, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing ever goes wrong.
Oh, of course not. And in 2 weeks, it will be time for our next roundtable. I'm definitely excited about that one. And I've been speaking with Ramin again. I'm hoping to have him on for either a solo cast or have him back in the roundtable at some point.
Have you talked to Tim yet? Because I know he is missing being in it on the roundtable.
Yeah. Well, I made the message in the roundtable. I've sent him something. I haven't heard anything back yet. We've been seeing him pop in and out between, I guess, his struggles of game dev.
Yeah.
Nobody struggles making a game, right?
No. Making a game's easy. All you gotta do is just sit down, make a game, and succeed. It's just as easy as that. I mean, you can do it in an hour if you skip lunch.
I mean, the other strategy is be Nintendo, and you'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, You could just be Nintendo, and it's just as easy as that.
Mm-hmm. But let me see. Anything else news related for me? I've been contacting more libraries. I've been doing it email this time instead of phone because if a library doesn't have an email address, they probably don't have an online connection. And I'm not really interested in traveling right now with everything that's going on.
Oh, but they would love to see you there.
Mm-hmm. With no masks on, too.
Yeah.
And lots of, I'm sure, hugging and handshaking just to really get it all going there.
Yep. Yep. Sounds like a regular old party.
Oh, yes. And work begins on the editing of book number 3 right now. So I should be getting a manuscript or an edited manuscript to review in the next few weeks. And we're hoping to have book 3 out by either late December or early to mid January. So excited about that, and I can just throw it at anyone who asks what is a roguelike. Thank you, Will. But I think with that, anything news related that is going on, other than of course we spoke last week about Genshin Impact that managed to break even in 2 weeks. Trying to see if there's anything else. A Blizzard is finally winding down on StarCraft 2 development, although I really haven't heard anything about StarCraft 2 in a few years. What about you?
No, I haven't heard anything on it.
And again, we're not exactly in like peak Blizzard territory right now.
Yeah. I know there's more updates on the Epic, Apple, and all that,
Mm-hmm.
massive lawsuit kind of thing. And that is that the judge is, like they had a choice between doing a jury kind of thing or doing a judge only kind of, the judge makes the decision, and they went with the judge decision, and that was Epic's choice. And I'm not sure if it was a wise choice because, like, the judge is really not happy with Epic,
Mm-hmm.
really not, and kind of have laid the smackdown on Epic a couple times already.
Mm-hmm.
So, but um, even the judge themselves has said that whatever the outcome of this, judgment is, it's not just going to affect Epic and Apple and these other companies involved. It's going to affect the entire industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the judge has already said that. So, I mean, the judge at least is familiar enough with with what is going on and how things are going to, how
Mm-hmm.
of an impact this is going to cause, and that's a good sign.
Yep. And it's still very unknown what this is going to really shake out in terms of the industry. Very much like on par with the whole loot box law that we were seeing a lot of murmurs about earlier this year, and then the whole virus pandemic just, completely scuttled that. But there's still a lot of discussions about what that means in terms of monetization in a lot of mobile and live service games.
Yeah, with the scorched earth process that the U.S. was going to go with, it was like, yeah, you can't make a game unless it's just a straight off paid game or a subscription model, and that's it. You otherwise you can't make a game, and
Yeah.
that was really bad. Is still really bad if they try to bring that crap up again.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like when I saw Ramin about, it, he said that it would screw up his games, and if
Yeah.
Ramin can't, and the dogs are apparently summoned by Ramin now, but if Ramin can't design a monetization-friendly mobile or free-to-play game, that's definitely a cause for concern.
Well, yeah, because free to play is banned in
Yeah,
that bill. So you can't
anything that.
design a free to play game in that within that rule because the free to play is banned.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically targets anything that could possibly, in any reasonable way, be targeted towards a minor. And
Yeah, except for subscriptions.
yeah,
So
and
your World of Warcraft would be fine,
mm-hmm,
and that can't be abused in any way.
mm-hmm.
But
And like speaking about live service games, the other big news that's going around is that Marvel's The Avengers game is just tanking, like every which way right now.
oh, is it?
Yeah, I think they had like less than 1,000 or so many like people online, which is not good when you promote a heavy multiplayer persistent landscape that's your end game.
Well, I mean, it is good when you turn out slop such as that game,
Mm-hmm.
because you know you played it and that game was just slop.
Yeah.
You know, I'm honestly surprised it isn't wildly successful swap. I mean, it probably still is wildly successful swap
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, in the end, I mean that game just was some kind of generic fighter with a with with a with not very good quality fighter either,
Mm-hmm.
generic and low quality, and just with a Avengers skin slapped on top of it.
Mm-hmm. You mean the cosplay Avengers?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah. Like I seen more realistic stuff as costumes in other fighting games. You know, like
mm-hmm.
there like there is many games out there that have had skins for like Avengers and stuff like that out there, and they were a better example than the actual Avengers games,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really sad.
Oh yeah, and again, the fact that Genshin Impact, a game that has no IP awareness, free to play, with again like at least in the United States, like no real market presence, completely blew up in 2 weeks. And like, who could have predicted that a year ago that hey, the Marvel IP is going to fail to an unknown Chinese brand?
Mm-hmm. Well, I could have predicted it because it's a movie game,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how movie games normally go.
Yep.
They make a lot of money and they fail horribly,
Yeah, we were
but not
hoping
financially.
for. I think we were all hoping that this would be, the Arkham Asylum for Marvel.
Yeah, sadly, it's not the case.
And to Ratsail's question, Genshin Impact is basically Breath of the Wild, free to play with gotcha. Yeah. I know they announced a few weeks ago there's a new Rocksteady game. They're doing a Suicide Squad, which I don't know. Like that trailer didn't do much for me. But again, game trailers don't usually work for me anyway.
Yeah, I've never been into Rocksteady games, so it never did anything for me either.
Hmm. And speaking about weird collaborations, I know they announced Mortal Kombat 11 that Rambo is going to be the next playable character in that game.
Yeah, apparently a lot of games, AAA and such, are doing a lot of these crossovers. Like Magic the Gathering
The
is doing a
Godzilla.
crossover right now with Godzilla, and I was like, what? What?
Like, yeah, like we were talking about this on the Discord channel. I think that could be a potential topic about how collaborations and tie-in branding works for video games. Because it is a very big deal for mobile games. The Shimigami Tensei game I was talking about, they had a Bayonetta, a Devil May Cry, and a Berserk tie-in for their game.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's also speaking about The Walking Dead, there's a Walking Dead collab with Brawlhalla as well.
And then there was that game, sort basically just like Brawlhalla, that was nothing but an indie crossover.
Mm-hmm. And Smite, I saw this on Gama Sutra. Smite has a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover. So now you can have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fight what was it? The various Indian gods and Cupid.
Oh, jeez.
Hmm. Yeah, Magic the Gathering meets Godzilla, and it's going to be tournament. And, like, that's the one thing about these crossovers is that it's such a weird thing with a design standpoint because you can't make the crossover characters weak. Like, they can't be bad characters because, why would somebody let you put their character in your game and make it, the trash mob?
Yeah.
But then you make it so good, then it becomes, oh, you weren't around for that 2 week period in 2018. Well, now your account's screwed.
Well, I don't think that. I think it's a whole entire set, not just so like 3 months, like
Mm-hmm.
any of their other sets, kind of thing, and they stay in for 2 years, kind of thing,
Yeah.
until they cycle out. I think anyway.
Mm-hmm. I know,
But
like,
I think they might start be doing a whole lot of licensed stuff. They might
mm-hmm.
be doing licensed stuff constantly, kind of thing. I'm unsure though.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's big money in it for obvious reasons, but it's definitely one of those things like Gotcha, where you can kind of see the monetization fighting the gameplay in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the strangest thing is, I think, like, Mortal Kombat gets away with it by the fact that, it's just complete nonsensical to begin with. So, like, who cares if Rambo's in this game? They already have the Joker and Robocop.
Yeah.
Isn't there already a Harry Potter Pokemon crossover? Wasn't there a Harry Potter Pokemon S game at some point? I'm
Well,
sure there was.
there's a Pokemon card game, and that's been out for ages.
Oh yes, that was around even when I was a child. 67 years ago.
Yeah, back in the early thousands.
Mm-hmm. When there was no such thing as Steam.
Yeah, and there was no internet. There was no TVs.
Mm-hmm.
You had to watch. You had to watch a giant stone.
Yeah. And yeah, like to Will's point, Payday did that as well. They had like famous YouTubers be in the game. They got I can't believe I forget his name. Tony Montana from Scarface is a playable character in it. The character Jacket from Hotline Miami. Although the soundtrack for the Hotline Miami level was awesome.
Yeah, I haven't played that one, but I've heard things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Never been much into soundtracks though for games. There's only been a few games where I've been like, yeah, I really like the soundtrack in that, and that's been I think like 3 games in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah, the Payday soundtrack was really good. I forget the name of the composer, but I think he went on. I think he's doing something else right now. No, it's not Logan Paul, unfortunately. It's some other big name one that I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know the one soundtrack that's coming to my mind that I really liked was the Final Fantasy X soundtrack, especially with that intro song for Blitzball.
Hmm.
That song was amazing.
Let's see. Yeah. Now I know a lot of people just do not like Logan Paul these days. Although, like, is he fighting people in boxing matches?
He is whenever he can do it, make money off of it.
Also, in Payday, you can shoot the fellow characters. Although you
Yeah,
can, but there is no wait. There is friendly fire, but then that doesn't help anyone. I would like to.
everybody hates. Most people, pretty much everybody hates Logan Paul that is not part of Logan Paul's fan base,
Mm-hmm.
which is sadly a large chunk of the humanity.
Yeah. I did download a few of those. The 60th games. I really want to see what the Golden Axe game is all about.
Is that a remake, Golden Axe, or something?
It was supposed to be a relaunch of the game that didn't end up working, and developer was, pushing a heavy crunch to make it. And it sounds very much like one of those ideas that it just never came to fruition.
So, like Golden Axe 4, basically.
Yeah. Let's see. I know they did a Streets of Rage. Well, it's not really Streets of Rage. It's just one level. But I think with that, let's get to the weird game segment, then we'll jump into our main topic. So we'll start with Sharks games, and hopefully the camera
Uh-oh.
just immediately worked. What happened?
What game is my first game on that list? Because I
The
started with yours.
Shades of Heroes.
Okay. And mine is not working.
Well, I got mine to work. I did. This time I'm the first one to get it to work.
There we go. Now
All right.
mine's working.
All right. So, our first game, this is one of Shark's titles. This is Shades of Heroes. And it looks like it is a CCG.
Mm.
And it, I don't know, like it has
You
cross.
notice,
What?
you notice any clashing?
It looks very similar to Gwent, at least in some of these early screenshots.
Except for
Ooh.
clashing. Because, like, if you look at the background, it's so obvious 3D kind of thing. It's you know, kind of lower quality 3D, but then you got the high quality 2D on the cards, and it just does not match. Higher quality, not necessarily high quality, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and the text looks very much like default text on some of this UI.
Mm-hmm. And look at how the numbers don't fit within the symbols at the top corners of the cards. It's like you can do that somewhat to stylize it, but you know, you have to do it right, and this is not right. It just looks like they missized the things and didn't resize them.
I like these classes here. You can have a Snow Valkyrie, a Fire Valkyrie, or a Pirate Captain.
Can you have a fire? Can you have a fire pirate captain and a snow pirate captain?
To a Rat's comment, you play with that without targeting.
Don't forget the desert Valkyrie.
I think
and the armed Valkyrie. And the storm Valkyrie.
That's a lot of Valkyries. Why isn't this game called Shades of Valkyries?
And what about the Valkyrie?
Okay. Yeah, Gwen is such a fascinating thing. Like, they completely redesigned the game essentially 3 times. You know, the original, then they did the first remake, and then they have the Homecoming update to it. Yeah. Again, in a market like this, you really need to be going all out from the beginning, or it's just not going to work.
Yep, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And I think, like, as a very weird aside, I think this is what Genshin Impact is going to really show people. That, you know, day one, that game is probably miles above most of the mobile and free-to-play games. Even probably some of the more, you know, live service games out there. And that really, I think, adds to these games.
Yeah. You have to, I think you have to come swinging out the gates with a really good game where it's the odds of you getting anywhere is pretty much none.
Yeah. I was mentioning about Gwen being redesigned like 3 times, I think. Alright, let's see. Let's move on to Paper Beasts. So this was a game that...
You've got these out of order.
Yeah, I think when I duplicated that, I think it put it in reverse. But... let's see. So this is one that, like, on initial look, it didn't seem to be interesting. But here's the part that I find very fascinating. It's born from the imagination of Eric Chahi. I don't know, like, is he working on this game? Or is this just, like, something he came up with and he, like, gave it to another developer?
I'd assume he's working on it.
Oh, and now the dogs are barking again.
I'm sure who that is.
I mean, aesthetically, it looks very interesting, but there is one bit of a problem. I'm not seeing anything in terms of gameplay. I see adventure and the sandbox. So
It's
it's.
simulation.
Hmm.
It may be something sort of like Spore kind of thing.
It seems like he's going. If you remember, he did that game From Dust. That was like a quasi god game, kind of like environment interaction sim. And this sounds like the evolution from that.
Could be.
I mean, it could be something very fascinating. I really liked From Dust, but I know a lot of people just bounced off of it. No, I'm gonna put in a request for it, and we'll see what happens. All right. Is the next game on your list Zelter?
No.
All right. I'm just gonna work backwards
It's
in
like the
my mind.
last one on my list. All right,
Okay.
I got that one up.
All right.
It's in all kinds of different orders because they went with the first one, then
Mm.
the third one, and now the last one.
All right. This was a game I think the developer got in touch with me, or I got a message about it from them, and I don't know. It doesn't really look like something like for me. I guess what kind of like attracted you, or kind of made you like see red flags with it?
I mean, didn't really like the art, definitely lacks kind of thing. It's not bad art, but it lacks the visual appeal. But like, I think it could have potential to be a good game, depending on how everything is executed and everything in here. But like I definitely see potential in this one, especially like right here where you see the tent and everything and the
Mm-hmm.
building blocks.
Some of the
Like,
lighting is pretty nice, or above like what we normally see.
yeah, like I can definitely see a lot of effort behind this one, and you know, their workbenches look really good, kind of thing, and the lighting, like you said, is really good, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just some of this, like city tiles, just or house tiles and stuff like that, just kind of miss the mark, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters don't look all that interesting either. But like everything else, like this looks like gameplay wise, this could be quite fun.
Mm.
But you know, there on this kind of game, there's no actually telling that until you actually play it.
Yeah. Hey, John. Yeah, I guess the thing I'm not sure of is this single player or is this multiplayer?
Probably both.
Hmm.
But did they list it anywhere?
No. I mean, I see other characters on the screens, but that could simply just be an AI partner.
Probably not.
Hmm.
I could almost guarantee you it's not because these kind of games, normally the only AIs you have are enemies, shopkeepers, and that's it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So one not being one of those would probably mean that it's another player.
Hmm. I'll put in four. We'll see what happens. It would be nice if we could find like another like kind of collaboration kind of game we can kind of switch on and off between like Factorio and such for the multiplayer nights.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. Let's go to uppers next.
Where's that at? Okay, that's like third from last. You really got these things in a weird organization.
Mm. All right,
So you ready for some uppers?
oh yes. So it looks like knockoff Street Fighter in some of these screenshots,
Yeah, it kind of does.
and I can't show the last screenshot on this game because I think it would probably be demodded by YouTube.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe not.
No, you can show on your stream, Char, and you can let me know what happens.
There we go. There's the last one of mine. Push
Mm-hmm.
that button.
There we go.
So that's exclusive content for my stream. So
Mm-hmm.
you guys go over and watch it if you want to see the exclusive.
So, yeah, I never heard of this one before in terms of franchise. I don't know how big it is in Japan.
It honestly looks less like Street Fighter, more like a Yakuza as of gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at it, I think it's like the sixth screenshot or so,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that there's that girl standing behind you, and then like two enemies in front of you that you're kicking.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely is not a Street Fighter kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's more Yakuza or.
I love the background of the second one where it says, let me hit him. That's a very detailed background. Yeah.
I'm not seeing the "let me hit him" thing.
It should be there at the bottom, right?
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
The font's hard to read.
Yeah. Alright, let's go to Drone Swarm. This one looked kind of interesting. It actually reminded me of another game that I have on Steam that I think had drone in the title. That this whole time I thought that's one that you were talking about with it. But that is more of a tower defense. This is more... It appears to be grand scale RTS. But I see some red flags with this one.
Mm-hmm.
For one, there's no UI on these screenshots.
Well, I mean, that's probably because some developers like hiding the UI for their
Yeah.
screenshots, which is a bad thing.
Because I don't know what we're actually doing in this. It looks cool.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason why it's a bad thing is
Yeah.
because when players look at your store page, the first thing they want to know is what you're going to be doing in the game, and without the UI in there, it's very hard to tell what even genre it is.
Yeah, it's indie strategy.
I remember a lot of talks on GDC being like, get rid of make a special function, get rid of your UI and everything, and make your screenshots look pretty. And then few years later, somebody comes back in there, make sure you leave your UI on, don't take it off, because players, have studied that that does not work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're prettier, but players don't check out your game because they don't know what it is.
Yep, and I mean, this marketing or these bullet points aren't helping. Control vast over 32,000 drones. Okay, how do I control it?
With magic.
How do I keep adapting? How do I use and combine swarm abilities? I do love the journey through an expansive story campaign featuring over 100 encounters. Because again, the more encounters automatically makes your game better, right?
Yeah. Just like the longer your game is, the better it is. So
Mm-hmm.
and the more words it has, the better it is. We know that from visual novels.
Yeah.
And your books, since you're already counting words.
Mm-hmm. Well, books are made of words. Hey, Ryu. Eh.
I love the pre-order stuff too.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Pre-order and get the deluxe content for free.
All right. Let's go to Fallen Angel. This was a game that we saw on. I think we played the demo of this one last week, and again, a lot of red flags from playing this.
Yeah, it looked good, but all the red flags in it.
Mm-hmm. Like some of the backgrounds look really nice, but then some of them just looks very like mismatching.
Yeah, few of them do.
Mm-hmm. And for next week's topic, I think this would probably be a good example talking about, do you need to be good at the game that you're making or at the genre you're making? And like playing this one, it seemed like the developers understood action games, but kind of like missed the details of what makes them fun to play.
Yeah. And then the topic after that, does Josh need to get good at playing games?
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Let's go to LP. This is one that I saw on my list, and I didn't want to pick it because it seemed a little too weird. But Shark found this one as well,
I
and
found all most of yours on my list, and I thought they were out there too.
mm-hmm. The main character is Panda in his super cocoon. He's able to withstand falls from great heights and can travel enormous distances.
I'm
Mm,
not seeing any enormous distances. I'm seeing a square box.
yeah, maybe it's all relative.
Who's related to the panda?
That looks like a winner right there.
Did he win a chicken dinner?
Mm-hmm. And again, every screenshot is the same, or just a different rotation. So it means
Yeah.
there's multiple levels.
See, it's a wide one level.
Mm-hmm.
And Ken San has a good point that it should have been a swath so that this would be enormous distances because it would take, a couple hours to cover this little box.
There you go. Here's a question. What does LP stand for? I assume the P is panda.
Let's Panda?
There we go. Is that the new Let's Play?
Yeah, it's Let's Panda.
Mm-hmm. And also, LP is a really good name for the algorithm, too.
Oh yeah. Because there's nothing out there with called LPs or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing from the,
Music side.
yeah.
All right, let's go to Hyper Brawl and then the Polygoneer. Ooh. Hyper Brawl, this is another one and this is again is what kind of the issue with like naming games or the trouble of it, that it sounded again similar to another game that I play that's nothing like this. So what caught your eye about this one?
Just the very generic name, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And the I just enjoyed all the like the fences and everything. I felt they made those look pretty interesting and everything. But the characters, they look
I don't understand how if you enjoyed Overcooked, you'll like this game.
I mean, doesn't this look like Overcooked to you?
You're I see a lot of cooking going on.
Yeah. I mean, if you loved Overcooked, I mean, you should love this. I mean, they're practically the same game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the aesthetic has that very like generic 3D look to me. Like everything just seems to be, like a mess of assets while I'm trying to like see what's going on.
Yeah, it does feel assetty,
Mm-hmm.
but I bet you it's not. But it certainly feels that way. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost all assets. But I'm betting there's no assets because
Mm-hmm.
it just you know feels like a mistake kind of thing.
Those are those are some very well done like neon fencing.
Yeah, I like the fencing. Fencing's my favorite part of the aesthetics.
There we go. All right, and then we'll go to Polygoneer. This is one that I saw, and I had a feeling you were going to pick this one just because of these screenshots.
Why did you have a feeling I was going to pick it?
Because it's just such a weird looking game. I knew you were going to pick it just to make me look at it. I love
No,
this GIF right here.
The reason why I picked it is because it's a very unique on rails kind of shooter kind of thing.
Hmm. They spelled psychedelic wrong. Psychedelic. There we go.
Psychedelic.
Click on until your currency.
Oh, look at the last GIF.
Oh, goodness.
It's the shapes and the beats.
Mm-hmm. What are those eye
Tri-
expressions?
yeah, the triangle was oddly worried, and
Mm-hmm.
the other two are like, bring it on.
And has you wait. Each state has its unique hard and pumping music. What's hard music? I get the pumping. I'm not sure what hard music is.
I guess that would be like metal or like some really hard like synth wave or something. Something just get your heart beating kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something impactful.
Shoot at everything.
I'm unsure if hard music fits this game though.
Wait, it is on rail, but you can go in all directions. So it's an on rail open game.
Yeah. I mean, you can see that by the rails
Yeah.
design. There's many different paths you can go, very much like that SWAT game that we played. But
Mm-hmm.
this one seems to be more different paths than that.
Mm-hmm.
And, not stuck to strictly going to one direction.
Yeah. Seems like it could be interesting. Huh?
Yeah, I think it could be.
We'll put in for him. Worst comes to worst, we'll all have eye problems at the end of the play. All right.
Yep. Or we'll have a new collection of red flags.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that, we'll go to my list, and I think mine got. I think
Then
it's.
you missed one of mine.
Oh
Sword
wait.
Sling.
Oh, that's on my list as well.
So you want to do Sword Slinger next?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is one that both Shark and I saw, and this one looked like there's potential. It's a physics-driven puzzle game where you control the velocity and kind of the orientation of your sword, which in turn will affect how it gets flung at these goblins.
You mean swung?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
Swung
gotta
and
use
flung.
the game. You gotta use the game terminology.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like it's like kind of like golf meets Angry Birds meets killing monsters. Definitely could be
Yeah.
interesting.
And that one, I'm definitely going to watch you fail to get good.
Mm-hmm. Match a block, triggers and actions. Oh, good. It's kind of like a programming-based challenge. Huh. That screenshot right here, or this one looks really nice. That you throw it. I actually want to watch it again. So you're throwing, shooting arrows, and you land. Huh. I mean, it looks like there's some potential here. Again, not the strongest in terms of aesthetics, but what I really like about this GIF is that it shows the UI and it shows the potential of it as well.
Yeah. Don't you mean Jeff, though?
GIF or GIF? Which one is it?
We'll let the chat argue about that for the next hour.
All right. And so, I guess like anything else you can say about this one on your side?
No, it just, it looks interesting, but I don't think it would hold attention for very long.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. It's one of those ideas that, and we've played those games lately where, hey, it's cool to play this.
For
Do I
about
really
5
want to
minutes.
do this for 10 hours?
Yeah. It's cool to play for 5 minutes.
But that's
All right to play for 10 minutes. Pretty horrible to play for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it's going to be one of those.
Kind of reminds you a little bit of when we played that Nauta game this past week. That loved the concept of it, but I don't see myself playing it the same way as Spelunky or Hades or some of the other games. Well,
Yeah.
I'll put in 4 and we'll see what happens. All right, and then let's go to Mega Jump. And this is a game.
This one was on my original list, and then I eliminated it.
I mean,
I
by the
figured you
screen.
would probably pick it back up
Yeah. I mean, look at these screenshots alone.
because you like the cringe.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's a really good screenshot right here. Okay, and again, it's a precision 3D platform that you will fall a lot.
Sounds like they didn't put any shadows in there. Actually, I'm sitting here looking at it. They didn't put no shadows in it.
Yes, you can't see how you're jumping. That's good.
Yep, it's very, very important thing to not see where you're jumping in a
And,
plateformer.
and the cut of this GIF is starting to hurt my eyes. Like, it's cutting, I think, too fast. Too stuttery for me.
It's more GIF composition.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then we go to the episodic. This is one that I picked because I have no idea what this game is or what their whole plan is.
It's the episodic.
And it's
the thing is this game is one that you can buy many times in each episode.
Mm-hmm. It is
the episodic 1, episodic 2, episodic 3,
maybe
and
someone
so on.
could explain this one to me. It is a playable cinematic gameplay trailer format for a project, the episodic. So it's a cinematic, but it's playable. Is that safely extreme?
Yeah, that's Blizzard right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's Blizzard. It's a playable cinematic. And who else was that? Was that Ubisoft that did that too recently?
In this game, you will experiencing something like never before, with realistic graphics and cool sound design.
And cinematics
Mm-hmm.
that you can play.
And you get to feel the extremely challenging world.
Can you feel it? Can you taste it though? Can you taste the colors?
Mm-hmm. And again, none of these screenshots actually show me what we're doing in this game. Well, there's a guy who looks like on the ground who's dead.
Yeah, that's you after a nap.
And here's a nondescript, looks like grassy field.
Yep. I mean, like, you can see all the gameplay in there. Like, just look at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then. All right. Let's go to Outpost Delta.
You're not going to get a key for that one?
Nah, I think I'll leave the mystery to the other people to figure out.
This one is one I've already got a key for because I picked it for a previous stream that either we didn't show or Josh forgot about it.
Yeah, because I don't remember this one, and it looks really interesting. It looks very much like a Metroid.
Mm-hmm.
Control of gravity. The pixel art, it's not bad. I think it's kind of like on like the moderate to good side. What do you think?
I think it's good, but they went too hard on the details, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And pixel art, when you get too much details in there, it looks worse.
Yeah, like if you look at the 4th screenshot, this looks very busy in terms of all the assets.
Yeah, there's just too much detail in there, and that's the thing I've learned in my last year, I guess, or two of studying pixel art is that pixel art looks best the less detail it has. The less detail it has, the more detailed and better it looks, which is odd.
Yeah.
When I redid the Chromasia house, the word of the day there, everybody's like, oh, it looks like you added tons of details to it. Now it's like, no, actually I deleted tons of details from it. That's the main reason why it looked better, because I deleted all the details. I
Yeah.
think you deleted details, not Adam. Yeah, deleted it.
hmm From a UI standpoint, there's one thing that's kind of sticking out like as like a nitpick that it looks like the UI for your weapon and health up there is not on like the same plane as your map on the right hand side. Like the map looks like it's slightly further down. I just
I
looks
think that's probably illusion
uh,
based off of the size
yeah.
of the big. The map is larger and the UI over here on the other side with your weapon and whatnot is smaller. They look. I think they're even, but it's just an illusion. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely something to nitpick.
Yeah. It just looks like it's like annoying me. Like it's like my eyes is like not like focusing on it right.
Yeah, it's one of those visual illusions. I'm pretty sure.
Alright, let's go to Devious Dungeon 2. And we played the first one. And didn't really like again, fun idea for a minute, and not much else beyond it. And
Mm.
and again, we have our this is actually I think a really good example when we go into our genre rant in the next few minutes. It is a medieval focused action platform with RPG style upgrades. So it's a platformer RPG.
Yeah,
And as a tie into my roguelike book, I like how one of the features is level randomization. Like nothing else beyond it, it's just that the levels are randomized and that automatically makes it better, right?
yeah. I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, like, the more random the levels are, the better. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
And the character art does not match anything about the actual game art. Mm-mm. Oh, you can be outside this time. You can go outside the dungeon.
Can you go back inside?
Maybe. Doesn't look like a horrible game, but it doesn't look like anything that's going to keep somebody's attention, especially with so many really great action roguelikes and just action platformers out right now.
Have you ever played a platformer?
No, never have or wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Alright, our next one is Hello Puppets. This is one that I picked. Oh, I didn't even realize that was published by Tiny Build. I didn't even notice that. Like
I
it,
didn't either, but this is when I was on my original list that I dumped.
yeah. Like it looks so much like almost like a design by committee horror game. Like it looks so generic to me.
Mm-hmm. It has a lot of the feel of what you might call it, the Hello Neighbor kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Which I guess is why it's published by Tiny Build.
Yeah, and maybe made by. I think they're the developer has worked with Tiny Build before. Probably
Probably.
wrote Interactive.
Thank you, Ryu. It's an immersive VR horror game. Like this just sounds so much like a like marketing the game. Like marketing the game, not marketing the game, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
PR speak.
yeah. I mean, this has YouTuber reaction all over it.
Yeah. I love unique horror meets comedy tone. I love like when games try to make their characters sound amazing, just make it sound even more generic. It's more than a bland companion character. So that's really great. You
Just
set the
slightly
bar
more.
really low.
It's slightly more than a generic companion.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about Hello Neighbor. The final bullet point: rich lore is hidden throughout the world. Mm.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that lore involves Hello Neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Wait, I saw. Was there a part about jump scares, or is that the other horror game that I picked? Complex challenging. Oh, here's and pop out scares. It's not a jump scare. It's a pop out scare.
Well, that's a brand new thing.
There you go. Never before seen.
Yeah, we've never seen pop out scares.
Mm-hmm. Game alternates between high intensity scares and fun VR puzzles. There we go. That's a perfect combination. Mm,
How about you be scared witless and then be forced to use your wits now that you have none?
there we go. All right. Let's move on to Don't Be Afraid. Speaking about other horror games, this is another one that, well, the description sounds more inventive than the last one, but there's not much else to it.
And there's a free prologue.
Oh, good. And there's terrifying drawings.
No,
Just
snap!
don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
And again, I don't know. It feels like horror games. I've yet to see a horror game market itself right in terms of screenshots, or at least well.
And look at your name is David, and you're 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet you all the YouTubers that play this will be acting less than younger than the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
They'll
Oh,
probably be acting like 5-year-olds.
yeah. As a funny aside, I saw somebody mentioning like on Twitter saying we're looking for your favorite YouTubers who play horror games to get their perfect reaction to the new Amnesia game. And I was like, I could put in for this, but I don't do reactions like that. Like I would be the horrible one to get a key for.
No, you get you do the Josh reaction.
Mm-hmm.
The Yeah, was I supposed to be scared with that?
Yeah. I could
Oh,
totally
I
fit
think I
those.
think we just missed the scare kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those are the Josh reactions.
Mm-hmm. I could totally fit in those compilation videos of people screaming while they're playing video games, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Look, there's a puppet. There's the nondescript hallway. Not really being afraid. All right. Two more. Let's go to Forklift Load. For a game that makes... I don't understand anything about what this game is.
You pick up stuff, you move it from point A to point B, you drop it off, you go back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the semi truck one, except for with no depth.
Mm-hmm. And I like the story. When all the mysteries are unraveled, you will see AI tears. How does an AI cry?
I mean, how doesn't the AI cry?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just got to put enough processing power through there, and you'll bring it to tears.
You use the forks of a forklift to carry and move objects. All of this is represented by physical behavior, which makes for a pleasant experience. I don't know what that sentence means.
You know what this game is really missing?
Platforming?
It's got a forklift, but it doesn't have a spoon lift. Or a knife lift.
I like the mini map is a bullet point.
Yeah, that's a totally acceptable and good bullet point right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very unique feature right there.
No one's ever had a mini map.
Yeah, that's something very unique to this game.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, Accident House.
Or purpose.
I don't know. But I like how on the store pages it says many translation errors. Please cooperate even if you have not bought the game. Please. I developed game by myself. Because a solo dev releasing their first game can work well in today's market, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And apparently it's an action-adventure strategy indie casual early access simulation.
You probably need to contact him and point out all of his typos and everything on his on his store page.
And there's a PayPal link on the store page too.
And it's very much black the game until it's red the game.
And then it's gray, the game.
Yep.
Mm.
You can't see squat in half of these. It's just black.
The truth about the Quiet Mansion series. I don't know what a Quiet Mansion series is.
Well, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. Oh my. The horrors of a table with a key on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, does that not get you shaking in the boots every time you see a table with a key on it?
Mm-hmm.
Very poor.
Terrifying.
By the way, if you look down, I don't know. Let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth one, the sudden hallucination
Mm-hmm.
down here. Look at the behind his head right there. Is that an extra pair of hands right there? Or does he have hands sticking out of his back? You know,
Could
like you see
be.
the palms right there with the.
Yeah.
I mean, is he? Is this guy really handy? Is this guy somebody you need to hire for your plumbers?
Yeah.
Seems like a handy guy.
There we go. Maybe he's Goro's friend.
Probably. Might be his cousin, because they kind of look similar.
All right. So I think with that, let's get to our main topic slash rant for our discussion this week, and that is talking about genre conventions, or what goes into a genre, as this is always a very tricky topic for developers, because like the whole idea of genres originally came as a way of just being able to describe like-minded games in terms of, video game coverage, but it has since become a major part of trying to figure out, how do you market a game, how do you even understand the game that you're trying to make.
Yeah. Also, how do we define a genre?
Mm-hmm. And that right there is what makes this a very hard topic. Because many genres feature elements from other games. Again, we've seen the growth of RPG mechanics in first person shooters. RPG plus platformer equaled Metroidvania. RPG plus combat equaled action RPG in the Diablos. And of course, what is a rogue?
Yeah. And, and it's not just, well, it's RPG elements plus those things
Mm-hmm.
equals that, and everybody knows from the Game Awards that Call of Duty is it's a action game, it's a RPG, it's a visual novel, and what else was it?
It's not a first person shooter.
No, it's definitely not that.
Mm-hmm. And you'll see people like try to fit everything they can when they're trying to describe these games. Like going back to Marvel's The Avengers earlier, like people were describing it as going to be this amazing RPG beat 'em up action game that has years and years of content to it.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see hardly any RPG in there.
Mm-hmm. But if it has numbers, it's automatically an RPG, right?
Yeah, which means every game out there is an RPG.
Mm-hmm. And that right there, I think that's a really good point to kind of build off of. That when people are trying to define a game, they very much focus on the very, surface level categories of it. And RPG is a really good example of this. Because, you can ask somebody you can ask 10 different people what's an RPG they play, and they'll probably give you 10 different answers.
Not me, because I know a few things about RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
I've made one before.
No, really? What about a
Yeah,
tactical strategy game?
it's a tactical RPG,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be the word of the day, Chromasia.
Mm-hmm. And
And the thing is RPGs were more defined like back, back like I don't know, like second, whatever the second generation of Sony's platform, the PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's where where starts after that is where stuff started to get hazy kind of thing with RPGs because everything basically before that time, before PlayStation 2 and before,
Mm-hmm.
everybody defined an RPG as what I still call an RPG and what is the actual RPG, and that would be stuff like Final Fantasy, stuff that people now
Mm-hmm.
call JRPGs, which makes no
Mm-hmm.
sense at all because and that confusion really started to come around the time Skyrim came out, and all these other games, which and Fable kind of thing, and it was
Mm-hmm.
those games were originally referred to as sandbox games, but you know at some point, someone, I don't know who, started calling them RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And that, kept on going. And then eventually it, to the people who play those games like Skyrim and, a Morrowind and Fable and all that stuff, they just called them RPGs. I had a friend say that, she was really into RPGs. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"You are like every game, every RPG I've ever told you about, you were not interested in. How are you into RPGs?" She's like, "I really like Skyrim and all this other stuff." I was like, "That's not an
Mm-hmm.
RPG."
And I guess this is my turn to take the mic and talk about the whole thing about roguelikes. As
Mhm.
the roguelike genre had that same point that roguelikes have been going on since the early 80s. Rogue, NetHack, Moria, so many other ones that were released. And the genre is popular. It had a niche following. But it wasn't until the early thousands that we started to see games being defined as roguelikes that had nothing to do with that genre. FTL, The Binding of Isaac, Spelunky, Dead Cells, Slay the Spire. Again, like, pick any well known game that has a roguelike tag to it on Steam, and most likely it came in the last 10 years and it's technically not a roguelike. And what ended up happening, of course, just like with the RPG genre, is that the examples that blew up kind of they really weren't indicative of that genre, but they became so popular and famous that everyone started to copy it. And then kind of this instead of just creating a subgenre, everyone just kind of lumped everything together like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and when it comes to RPGs kind of thing, like there was already many different types of RPGs. There was your standard RPGs, which were all turn-based kind of thing. And then you had, like a Final Fantasy kind of thing. And then you had the action RPGs, which the action RPGs were,
Mm-hmm.
like a Star Ocean kind of thing, which were basically exactly like an RPG, but with an action-based combat system rather than turn-based or other kind of thing. Which now we've got the Diablos of the world kind of entrenching into action RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean they have a lot in common kind of thing, but I don't think they're the same genre. I think that's more of a Diablo like than an action RPG kind of thing.
And
And we have that encroaching, and then we have the tactical RPGs, which is the same as the regular RPGs, but with a grid-based chess-like movement, grid kind of thing, like your Disgaea, your Final Fantasy Tactics,
ogre battle.
your whatchamacallit, your Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm. And
And then you have, now that somehow being encroached on by itself somehow, because now
it's
people are
double
calling them
back.
strategy,
Hmm.
RPGs and strategy. What was the other one?
Tactical RPG, strategy RPG.
Tactical strategy.
Hmm.
It's like, but those are all the same thing. Stop
Yeah.
encroaching. Yeah, I mean,
And that, I think, is a really good question. I think we should try and answer, try to. And for the chat and people watching this record, I want to ask this as well. How much, I think, do we need to, I guess, delineate down in terms of these genres? Like, of course, like action RPG, could we go as far to go, like, down to a Diablo like? Because this was a discussion a lot of people had about Metroidvanias. That, you know, is a Metroid or a Castlevania game different enough to warrant its own genre? Or why don't we just call them platformers? Now, I already have an answer to that in the back of my head, but I want to throw that out to everyone watching this.
we could just call them platformers.
Mm-hmm. Because some people are saying, why don't we call them, action adventure platformers? Well, platformers are already action adventure. You're exploring and jumping.
Hmm.
RPG platformer. And this is, again, why this idea of genres gets very murky. Because there has to be, I think, enough of the old genre to consider it, still part of it. But if it's different enough, can we create a new subgenre? Because it seems like a lot of people don't like having subgenres of games.
Yeah, I mean, but like, it has to be subgenres
Mm-hmm.
because I mean that is a established fact in indies kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, like there absolutely is subgenres, and the oh, we got an echo now apparently.
Mm-mm. I didn't hear it. Uh-oh.
And
Hmm.
you have two streams open. Is one not muted?
So-called FPS Doom clones. Yeah, again, like to Will's point, like when we start to see, like, there's a difference between adopting elements of a genre and working in that genre. Hopefully, there's not an echo right now because I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Yeah, I'm not either. Are you hearing anything, Kinzan? Are you hearing that echo?
Hmm.
You hearing Josh twice?
like something like Doom would be a good example of that. Doom has upgrade mechanics like in an RPG or an adventure game, but it's not an RPG or an adventure game. There's no way you can square those two circles.
Yeah, I I think that platforms like Steam are definitely part of the cause
Mm-hmm.
because like you can just list all these genres for your game rather than this is the main genre or these two are the main genres and these are the subgenres kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I mean it's probably possible to have two main genres. It'd be pretty hard to do that, but it would be possible kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And this leads to a lot of confusion of the algorithm. Because did you know that Hollow Knight is just like Sekiro or
Yeah,
Monster Hunter?
yeah, they're exactly the same.
And this, I think, is one of those very interesting things about this. That one of the big things about how game design grew over the last decade was taking and borrowing elements from other genres. Whether it is combining, like hell, we could even go back to Genshin Impact, which combined Breath of the Wild with a gotcha game. Call of Duty blew up because it combined RPG progression with a first person shooter.
Hmm.
Borderlands, first person shooter meets an RPG. A Bangu Ryu, a deck builder roguelike. We combine a CCG with rogue elements, and we get something brand new. And
Yeah, I mean, with my current game, I'm combining a mini game from a RPG
mm-hmm,
and a CCG.
Yeah. So you can see, like, this is where a lot of this creativity comes from. But therein lies that problem of genre definitions. Is, like, going back to something like Slay the Spire, is it a deck building roguelike or a roguelike with deck building elements?
Mm-hmm.
And this stuff, like, for people watching us right now, I think this comes off as a little pedantic. And it's not supposed to be, because one of the importance as a developer is understanding what the genre that you're working in. If you're telling me, for instance, that you're building a roguelike and your game, it has no procedural elements, it's a linear 2-hour story, that's not a roguelike.
Yeah. And we've seen many examples of those,
Mm-hmm.
especially on Keymailer. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
we found several today, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And the genre is important to let the player know, the consumer know what
Mm-hmm.
kind of game it is before they buy it, kind
Yeah.
of thing.
And
And sadly, Steam does not really, support that as well as they should. They just let you put whatever tags. They need to put a limit on what tags you have, and also limit, set it for main genre and subgenres kind of
yeah.
thing.
Hi, Matthew. Yep.
But Monster Train was a really good example of one of the like the two main genres kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's both a deck builder as a main genre as well as a rogue,
Mm-hmm.
or the new or definition of a rogue.
Yep. And its tags features deck building and rogue light. And I would not call that a rogue light. I would call that more of, again, like a deck building roguelike. And like in the book, like one of the major topics I'm discussing is just that very discussion of, you know, do we need subgenres for the roguelike genre? And I said yes. That it is different and varied enough that you can't just call something a roguelike anymore. Just like, as you said, you can't just call something an RPG. Because if you just say RPG, then we can fit Borderlands in there. We can fit anything with numbers. If it has a stat page, it's automatically an RPG, right?
Yeah, automatically.
Yeah.
And the thing is, see, what would we call those multiple genres? Would we call them a roguelite light, a
Mm-hmm.
roguelite light, a roguelite light?
Roguelite like.
Yeah, there we go.
And again, that's when we start to get very nitpicky with it. Like, the genre itself, I think, describes the core gameplay, or what are the foundational elements of your game. If you're jumping from one platform to another, it's a platformer.
Hmm.
But what are
If
the other?
you're double jumping, and it's not just from platform to platform, but rather, in a free roaming sense, then it's a Metroidvania.
Mm-hmm. And if we really want to throw gasoline on this fire, if you have RPG mechanics while you're doing double jumping in an open space, then it's an Igavania. What's a Joshvania? Let's let chat create that one for us.
It's a game where you fail to get good.
While double jumping.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to look at, again, what are the major elements, because there's a difference between, like, going back to a Metroidvania. Exactly, board fan. Like we said, there's a difference between having, let's say, platforming elements be your core gameplay loop, or being like a narrative driven game that also has you jumping from platform to platform. And again, it sounds nitpicky, but there are some serious implications of that. If you tell me your game's a platformer and it is horrible to control, it doesn't play right, it's just more focused on going from a story beat to a story beat, I'm going to consider that you're lying to me about your game.
Hmm. And the thing is see, this even goes into marketing kind of thing, because the fact is when you're looking for somebody to play your game on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and whatnot, you want to do research on them and find out what kind of genres they're into, and then you're going to want to be sure that they're into the genre that your game is. And if you're labeling your game a first-person shooter, and they're into first-person shooters, but your game is actually a platformer, not going to go well. Not going to go well at all.
Josh Van is a weird ripoff. There we go. Yep, and I'm happy you brought up a first person shooter because that was going to be my next example. That when I spoke with Dave Oshie, I think, from New Blood, who they published Dusk, they published a Medieval, Ultra Kill, and a few others, they very much wear their genre of their games on its sleeve. Like, if they say their game's a first person shooter, it is a first person shooter. Like, they're not going to mince words. They're not going to try and get around it. And they have such a or laser like focus on what their genre is that I think it really helps them in that aspect. If you're playing Dusk, you like first person shooters. Like, there's no RPG mechanics, there's no platforming, there's no strategy or tactics. It's basically, do you like FPS? Yes, you're going to buy this game.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it. Steam also has a thing that, muddies the water even more than normal genres kind of thing, because they have the other stuff. Like, how is dark story part of a genre?
Yeah.
Like that's right there in these genres. Although they don't call them genres, they call them tags. But they're genres and tags mixed in together. It's like, don't do that, Steam.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like have you ever played the dark story genre?
Or how about, like, I looked on Ultra Kill and it's described as a character action game. What? The person doesn't talk. It's not even, you don't even see them on screen. How's that a character action game?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard that genre before. Mm-hmm. And when we, like, for next week's topic as a spoiler, when we talk about being good at a game, this is what we're kind of talking about, that you have to understand the conventions of the genre that you're working in. And I see this a lot from first time and early indie developers. I think that car is near me, Matthew. You missed the dogs earlier. But if you're telling me, if you're trying to build a platformer, and your platformer has no focus on any of those mechanics and design, again, so many developers will use a genre simply as like the medium to do something completely else with it. But that doesn't make that game that genre. Telling me that if you're building a walking sim, but you're controlling it like a car, yes, it's still a walking sim. It's a driving sim. It's not a open world racing game.
Yeah. And there's just so much muddying of the water, and it's not just platforms doing it, it's consumers doing it. It's not just consumers and platforms, it's the media doing it.
Yep. YouTubers and streamers and game journalists alike.
And some of them are doing it because they honestly don't know. They don't know the truth.
Oh, yes. I've been reading so many articles and pieces about roguelikes and talking about how the genre didn't exist until 10 years ago. And then
Yeah.
my soul left my body for a second.
Did you get reincarnated and start a new run?
Yeah, exactly. Or that.
10 years later, just 10 years ago, you started that new run.
Mm-hmm. I need to refresh, I think, now.
Yeah, I
And
mean, like the original Rogue was one of the first video games we ever had, wasn't it?
mm-hmm.
We got that back in what, 79, 78?
And to make Shark crazy, this would be like somebody writing articles saying the RPG genre didn't exist or it was very unknown until the Final Fantasy VII remake, and now that is the #1 RPG on the market.
No, no.
And remember, folks, if you want to throw Shark off, just say Neon Continuum is pay to win 5 times in the chat, and that'll completely mess with them. Kind of
Or
like
say that Final
Beetlejuice.
Fantasy VII Remake is the best game ever.
One or the other.
Or you can combine the two and make a train wreck.
Final Fantasy VII Remake is a pay to win game?
Well, I meant that makes a lot of sense, actually.
And yeah, like this is something that we see a lot from people who, and we've said this before as well, that a lot of people will associate a genre with whatever the first game that they play that they think is of that genre. So for a lot of people, they think a roguelike is FTL. Or they think that all RPGs are just Borderlands.
Yeah.
I prefer Zelda, he's my favorite. There we go.
Yeah, Zelda, that guy, he certainly is a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody saying something about Zelda having very feminine looking males. I mean, Zelda, I think is a very good example of that. Very feminine looking male.
Yeah. And like we said, there's definitely confusion. I think a general lack of education among people who cover games. There are still people who say that all video games are nothing but Call of Duty or Madden.
Or a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. And that, every RPG is just like Skyrim. Or every platformer is just Mario.
And this made up genre of JRPGs now. How if the game, I gotta love this argument.
Mm-hmm.
So like the original RPGs, now people are calling them JRPGs and everything. They'll see a game that is, fits, both genres basically, and they'll say it's a part of neither, because the fact is this not an RPG because it's not like Skyrim, and it's not a JRPG because it wasn't made in Japan. It's like, so what is it? It's a game. Yeah. It's like, really?
I'm sure there are probably a few pieces out there saying that Hades is not a roguelike, even though you repeat runs. Mm-hmm. And
Probably.
there are people who love to try and stretch the genre conventions because they don't want to seem like they're a fan of that genre. And
yeah, see them doing with that with the term furry too.
Well, that's probably gonna be a D-mod probably.
You think so?
Maybe. And like we've said, you have to understand the differences between the genre and the conventions of said genre. Because if you're saying your game is part of that genre, but just uses conventions of it, then it's not really that example. I'm trying to think of some examples off the top of my head about games that did just that. And not much has come to my head. Can you think of any games that did that? That they borrow the conventions of a genre but aren't really labeled in that genre?
I mean, there's I know there's examples out there, but I'm not recalling any off the top of my head.
maybe I was thinking Thomas Was Alone, but that I think has platforming mechanics in. Like it is a platformer, but it is definitely more focused on story and puzzle solving than the action based design of a platformer. You never know, Ken, when it comes to YouTube these days.
Well, Ryu, if you go back in history and look, it was undisputed for many, many years until Skyrim came out. It was RPG was Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, all that. That was completely undisputed until around the time Skyrim came out. And then it was after that when those games started calling themselves RPGs. Because the term RPG has been around for a very long time.
I think I just thought of an example. First person games. There are a lot of games that make use of first person, but still may call themselves a first person shooter or a first person element, so even if that's not the main kind of interaction of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's nothing wrong with taking genre conventions, but you have to understand what are the marketable elements of that genre if you're trying to get somebody to play your game. Like, if you're calling yourself a first person shooter, but you don't use any guns and you jump around, then you're not really going to market that game to the same people who enjoy Doom or Dusk.
Yep. And, that's kind of the key thing to get right with your thing and with your genre. And, it's also like the most messy one of these is the RPGs because I've heard many developers of RPGs, like they all have problems because every time they list their game as an RPG, the Steam algorithm will pull up every other game but theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the same time, you will have people complaining, this ain't RPG, this ain't Skyrim.
Mm.
This ain't RPG, it's not this other, game. It's not, Call of Duty. This isn't RPG. This isn't like, another game with numbers in it.
Or Souls-likes would be another big one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not RPG. It's not like, Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, those aren't RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Those have RPG elements, but at this point, every game does.
Yeah. And yeah, and again, like that's one of those big points. There's a difference between a game that has RPG elements to it and a game that is an actual RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I think there's this tendency that when we say this, that it's an attack on the game. But no, saying that your game is not an RPG doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just means it's not an RPG.
Yeah, just as simple as that. And, it doesn't mean one is better than the other because, you can make an RPG, you can make a first-person shooter, you can make any game good kind of thing. The genre is just a classification, saying that, it's not milk doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's not milk.
Yep.
That burrito over there is not milk. That's Mexican food.
Yeah.
Or maybe American version of Mexican food. It's not milk though.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly not milk. And just not like don't classify your burritos as milk. Don't classify your first person shooters as an RPG. Don't classify your sandbox games as RPGs. Don't classify your Souls games as RPGs. Don't classify every game as RPG. Only classify your game as RPG if it's an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing goes with Metrovanias, and rogues and all these other genres. Don't classify your game as a genre that it's not,
Mm-hmm.
because you're only going to cause trouble for yourself, trouble for your consumers, trouble for anybody who looks at your game, and troubles for the entire industry. Because that's why we're here today having this conversation, because people have caused trouble and muddied the waters and confused people to what each genre is.
Yeah. And you have to go into this with the understanding of what is the primary genre of your game. Like we said, there's a difference between saying I'm making a racing game with roguelike elements versus I'm making a roguelike with racing elements. And to Matthew's comment about the difference between an RPG that has first person shooter elements and a first person shooter that has RPG elements.
Mm-hmm. Or a survival game that has a survival builder game that has first person shooter elements.
Mm-hmm. Because if you say, like, I think that's a good example there. If you say that your game is a survival game and all you're doing is running around shooting enemies and you don't have to worry about health or management, that's not a survival game. That's a first person shooter.
Yeah, and I have seen many examples of that. It's like, no, this is basically Call of Duty, and you're calling it a survival game? Well, you've got to survive to be the last one. That's not what a survival game is.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, give this person brain surgery.
First person shooter dating sim. There we go. There's a new hot one. And to the comment earlier about Sonic, 3D Sonic games were good, but they never managed to figure out what they wanted that design to be, especially the stand up to Mario, I think.
Yes, Sonic design has been all over the board.
Oh, yes. We all love Sonic 2006, right?
Oh, yeah, we love every Sonic.
And when you're trying to figure this stuff out, if you can't understand what is your core genre, your core gameplay loop, it typically leads to a game that it just doesn't feel right to play. And like we've said, any game can try to copy what is an RPG, but that doesn't make it a good RPG.
Yeah, and there are examples to where you can have two main genres kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like survival horror. That's a good, like those two you can, absolutely mesh 100% as both main genres kind of thing. Survival and horror. You can also do, survival and crafting mesh just right together,
Action adventure.
Action RPG.
Mm-hmm.
You can, Slay the Spire and Monster Train are good examples of the rogue, card building, deck building, combined. And, but like, you're never going to have three main genres, at least as far as I can tell. I may be wrong, but, we'll find out in about 200 years from now if somebody's able to get a third perfectly meshed genre in there. But if you're not perfectly meshing a genre together like those kind of thing, then it's not a dual genre. It's a single genre with elements of the other. Like Call of Duty's an FPS with RPG elements.
But it's not exactly.
It's not an RPG though. It's not even remotely close to an RPG. It just has elements from one. Mm-hmm. There is nothing in there that is an RPG. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of stuff that is RPG elements, but there's nothing in there that's actual RPG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And elements and being a thing are totally different things. Yeah. Because otherwise, Call of Duty's just the same as, Final Fantasy.
Or Skyrim.
And Skyrim.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody with an IQ above like 2 can tell you that's not true.
And this is another reason you have to be very careful. Again, like going back to something like Anthem, that Nobody knew what Anthem was going to be as a game. Is it going to be an RPG that you fly around shooting bad guys? Is it a game where you fly around shooting bad guys and crafting gear? And if you can't nail down what your game is going to be, you're never going to make something that's going to look competent.
Mm-hmm.
And to Blue Fox's point about, yeah, like roguelike, again, it's a genre that has so many different, sub definitions of it. Like, for instance, like FTL is part of the roguelike genre, but there is very little of the original rogue or rogue elements in that game. It plays nothing like anything that came before it.
Mm-hmm. And it's a shell of its former stuff. It's more rogue elements than rogue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another issue kind of thing that we have here. It's not just RPGs. I mean, rogues also got the very bad treatment kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's very, very different for rogues than it is for RPGs, because rogues for a long time were pretty much a dead genre kind of thing, because they just didn't exist pretty much for a long time, or at least not in any kind of mainstream impact
like
kind of thing.
there have been roguelikes being developed for years now. It never truly went away, but it never achieved pop culture success. And again, we could attribute something like The Binding of Isaac, Spelunky, FTL, like games around like that period, like 2008 to maybe like 2012 was kind of when the roguelike genre, rogue elements really blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where RPGs have been really active the entire time, and they were just like hostily took over basically at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Because most RPGs don't have guns, but they have magic, and then you have Skyrim and such with guns, so they're literally taken by gunpoint.
Yeah. And that's why, like, in my book, and I've said this, like, Spelunky is probably one of the most recognizable games in the roguelike genre, because that's a game that just really kind of, it lit the fuse again for it. And I think it was, like, the first one to really blow up, because when we look at some, like, the other games that were kind of roguelike in nature, Breath of Fire, Dragon Quarter, Dead Rising, Toe Jam, and Earl, they were good games, but they didn't really bring that genre to the forefront as much as Spelunky did.
Yeah, and generally, like, when you're making a game, I think in general you're best off sticking to a single genre, and then maybe putting some elements of another genre in there, maybe, but only if it fits, kind of thing. We don't like making these 20 different genre games that are just throwing stuff at it is not the way to make games.
You don't want to play a first-person shooter with dating sim, with survival crafting, with spaceship combat, with turn-based tactical RPGs, with Metroidvania double jumping platforming.
No, do not want to play that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think Ryu made this point a few minutes ago about, what was it? With BioWare, that when I try to play Mass Effect, because I saw, they're doing action now, it's going to be this, it's going to be a more of an RPG for me. But then when I play Mass Effect, after 10 minutes, I'm like, this is a horrible third-person shooter. Like, I don't want to play this game. And again, I was kind of misled by what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And if we think about it, the visual novel genre, that's basically a subgenre of RPGs. Because if you take the RPGs, you strip out all the combat, you strip out everything but the cutscenes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically a visual novel, and then they redo it in such a way so that it's not about the story is not about the combat and saving the world, but rather probably about some waifu or something kind of thing.
I mean,
but
Disco Elysium, it has very much an RPG system, but there's no combat to it. It's all interacting with the story.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's a well, it's very much like a Twine game, which a Twine game is pretty much a RPG meets visual novel kind of thing, which is ironic since the visual novel is a substitute of an RPG, and it's sort of halfway in between the two kind of thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
Twine games are very much about storytelling and interactive stories kind of thing. Where you make your own choices, you go down your own rabbit hole. It's not procedural generation or anything. It's all predetermined story, but it's all predetermined story that branches out into thousands of different ways potentially. If you, depending on how far you go in your design of that, which is determined a lot by RPG based stats, because like
Mm-hmm.
the way they're able to do that is like if like they monitor stats and everything based off of your selection. You select a bunch of stuff that's very masochistic kind of thing, and you get your masochism stat really high. Then it's going to then pop up this one special option that is basically specifically for the masochist kind of thing. And then you can select that, and you can really go down this masochism wormhole kind of thing all the way through the end. Or you could be like going towards the cute side and going that route kind of thing. And like there's many different ways you can show choices that pop up based off of stats, which those stats are based off of your choices that you have made, hence giving you farther choices based off of your choices kind of thing. And you can also walk out choices based off of that too.
And I think to Matthew's point about educational platform, like we did see the edutainment kind of genre, like the bubble there, and like it was like mid 90s, maybe early thousands. Like that idea, and again, I think that's a really good example that it's a like if you remember again, I'm really dating myself here. If you remember the Learning Company or Borderbun, whatever their name was, like those were like the big names of the mid '90s. Like you play them like a platformer, or you play them as a shooter or a diving game, whatever. But the real focus is on learning math. So it's like, yes, you can walk and jump, but you're really just solving for X when you play those games.
Yeah,
And one of the reasons why the Zumbinis game was such a groundbreaking example of that genre was, yes, it was a. Oh yeah, Mario's missing. I do own that one too. Like, oh, that's another good example as well. Like Mario's missing. You're walking and you're jumping. It's not a platformer. Although I did learn that the Golden Gate Bridge is not actually golden from that game, so thank you, Mario's missing, for that little educational tidbit.
hmm?
But the reason why the Zubinis work was that it was a game first. The educational elements were second. And I finally found my copy of the manual, and they talk about that in the manual itself. They have lessons, or they have the kind of like for teachers or parents section. They say, okay, this is a game where you're making pizzas, but this is really teaching kids about deductive reasoning and critical thinking.
Yeah, and back to what you said about dating yourself, we have dating games,
Mm,
and those are offshoot off of visual novels kind of thing. Which some of them end up tying in puzzle game elements. Some of them end
mm.
up turning in RPG mechanics to level up and get your date kind of thing.
Nobody
And
come
like
with a Josh dating sim, please. That will kill the YouTube algorithm.
somebody needs to make the Josh dating game.
There we go. Oh yes, and Math Blast. So I remember that one as well.
Number muncher. I
Oregon
love
Trail.
playing. Yeah, enjoyed playing those when I was young in
Yeah.
school.
And like we said, like when you take elements from other genres, it can lead to some very fascinating designs. And there is nothing wrong with that. What we're saying is that you need to settle on what your core market is. Again, if your game is a first person shooter where you're if you describe your game as a first person shooter, but there are no guns, there's no point and click interface, and you're just walking around delivering newspapers, don't be telling that to people who play Doom Eternal or Ultra Kill. Now, you could create, the next, newspaper sim game that nobody's ever heard of. And
New Land Paperboy?
exactly. You could create the new Paperboy. And I mean, when we look at some of the games that have been blowing up lately, they come from very small developers who are just combining genre elements into a unique thing. I mean, look at Fall Guys. It's a party, battle royale platform physics game,
Mm-hmm.
and it blew up like gangbusters. Look at what happened to Among Us after
What
two
about
years.
Gangbusters?
Yeah.
Yeah, Among Us was it's a social
Mm-hmm.
lying simulator uh mini
Kill
game.
Josh first simulator.
But it's a mini game, game kind of thing. It's very much like a Wario kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a very WarioWare social lying simulator kind of game.
Yeah. Look at Dead by Daylight. It's a cooperative survival horror. You get to play as a killer game as well. So,
Yeah, and
like,
we got 7 Days to Die, which is a
mm-hmm.
crafting survival, maybe a little bit of horror, but not really. I wouldn't, because it's not trying to scare you. I mean, it can scare you definitely, but it's not trying to. It's also got first-person shooter elements, first-person hitting elements, kind of thing. It's got it's got tons of crafting. It's got all the survival and everything.
I'm glad you brought up first person fighting because that's another one of those little hills that I'll die on when people argue that. That just because you have a default punch doesn't mean you're a first person fighting game. Like, I've seen games that try to say, oh, we're a fighting game, and all you do is just mash a punch button. And I think about games like Condemned, or I think it was called Beatdown. I'm sure there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head that actually allow you to fight in first person while you're dealing with these enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what kind of our point is, that I never did play the Carmen Sandiego. That wasn't the point. That's just a random tangent from those.
That's the point.
That's the point. We never played Carmen Sandiego. But
good point.
The point is that you have to be able to explain why this is in your game. Because if you're just throwing stuff in to, make the Steam algorithm, the YouTube algorithm happy, that doesn't make a great game. My game is a stealth horror first-person shooter crafting sim. And the crafting is just literally pressing square to, to create a pointy stick.
Yeah. But we can never forget that the point is that you've never played Carmen Sandiego.
There you go. That will be the new thumbnail for this piece. And I guess, let me see. Time-wise, I think we're going to wrap things up in the next few minutes. But I guess my final point is that do not be afraid to mix genre conventions. That is not what we're arguing against. If you want to make a horror game that also is a driving sim, you can do that. If you want to make a driving sim that's also a horror game, you can do that as well. Mm-hmm. But you need to understand what is the core of your experience. If the core of your game is a horror sim, then is a horror game, then yes, if the driving's a little floaty, if it's not, super realistic, okay, it's not going to damn your game. But if
Hmm.
you say your game is a driving sim with horror elements and it is horrible to control and drive your car around, then people are gonna come after you for that because that is misrepresenting your game.
Yeah. And if you were to completely fuse the two and say it's a driving horror, not like elements of one or the other,
Mm-hmm.
then you better have really good driving. You better have really good
Mm-hmm.
horror, and those two things better both be extremely common and extremely common at the same time, not
Yep.
separately. Not
Exactly.
not you get out of the car and then that's when the horror happens.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the horror better happen while you're driving.
Yep.
You know, like you have like this vampire chasing after you while you're in the car and you're drifting around a corner drift to style, trying to smoke out the vampire, to
Mm-hmm.
blur his vision so he overshoots you and goes off the side.
Yeah.
Like you better have those things very much tied in together, kind of thing,
Yeah, and
or else.
that's and like that right there is where a lot of developers will fail on. They'll say, it's a horror driving game. You drive for 2 minutes, and then you spend the next hour walking around a building.
Mm-hmm. And you get scared while you get the horror when you're out there.
Yeah, and then when you're back in
And
the car, nothing happens.
mm-hmm. And you're just safe in the car. That would be like what you call it. What's that game you play where you drive that van to the thing that you're always talking about, where you're wanting to get more updates, and you signs or something. Hell
Hell
sign,
sign,
is that?
hell
Yeah,
sign, yeah.
it would be like calling that a driving horror.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, you only drive the truck to enter and leave the map.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you don't even actually drive. You just start it and then it goes on its own transition.
And yeah,
You know,
to Blue's point about making the best game and being famous, yeah, again, like being successful in the game industry, that's another topic in of itself.
oh yeah, I mean, it's easy to become successful as well. All you gotta do is skip lunch and you can do it in an hour.
Yeah. But
Just as easy as that.
I am about at time, so for you, Shark, do you have any final points to bring up about this kind of discussion about genre conventions and defining genres?
Well, it's mostly a recap, but there is a little bit of new stuff in here.
Mm-hmm.
So like you need to define your genre as what it is, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In most of the cases it'll be a single genre, whether it's a with maybe elements of others, but like
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to be putting in elements that don't make sense, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But putting in elements that do make sense can be a world of fun, kind of thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can make, like Star Ocean, till the end of time, I believe. Really old game. That one was really good, and it was, in their item system they had alchemy, kind of thing, and the alchemy was it was a crafting system. It was one of the first crafting systems we've seen. May have been the very first. I don't know. But it was definitely before crafting games existed as a whole, kind of thing. It was way before Minecraft, kind of thing. But like that made the game better. I don't know how well it holds up today,
But
back then it was amazing in there. It was like, oh my god, I can create basically infinite items, and I've got to discover what items I can actually make by experimenting, which it goes in, which is probably what inspired the artillery games.
Say that.
Yeah. And there's just so much stuff you can do. The way I think about realism in games, kind of thing, is I like. That's when I usually like to not necessarily going for 100% realism, but when I like embracing the realism, that's generally like when I like adding in elements to the thing, because it's like platforming really doesn't fit this part. But if I added in elements of this other genre, it could more realistically tell what I'm trying to convey in this game and give you a more realistic experience in this. It's definitely not. It's still going to be totally fantasy and everything, but it's more fitting to the thing you're doing, kind of thing. And in that better fitting, it in the other genre kind of thing, you just put those elements in there, and then it actually feels more like you're actually doing the thing you're doing, kind of thing. And but I would advise keeping the subgenres to a minimum because of scope.
Yeah.
And scope is always an issue, and you never want to exceed this scope to make it where you can never complete a game. You need to complete that game, but I would advise everybody who's who has not published a game yet, at least one game, to stick to a single genre. A single genre with no sub elements, because if you go beyond that, you're going to have problems.
Yeah, and
you need to, but sticking to a single genre doesn't mean doing something unoriginal. There are many ways to absolutely change up stuff in the genre, like with my last game, The Word of the Day, Chromasia. Like, I was making a game, a tactical RPG, and it was a tactical RPG based off of Disgaea, which really kind of sets it out there. But at the end of the day, I did so many different things with that in a lot of ways it came out nothing like Disgaea.
Yep. And to add on to what Shark said about working in a single genre, mixing elements, that it is always better to do one thing right than do two things that are just okay, or one thing right and one thing wrong. But this was a trap a lot of AAA developers ran into in the late 90s, early 2000s, with saying, we're going to make this amazing action game, but we're on this horrible driving section, and this horrible stealth section. And it always leads to games being less than the sum of their parts. If you want to have a driving section in your game, you can do it, but it better be of the same quality as everything else in your game, or don't have it in there to begin with.
Yeah, and another point of that is you've got to be careful about that. On for another factor, is if this is a puzzle game, there we talked earlier about the thinking games versus Twitch reaction games kind of thing. And if you're in a thinking game, you probably only want to put elements of other thinking games in there. You don't want to have somebody playing a puzzle game and then just all of a sudden here's a first-person shooter section.
Yes.
And everybody just, that is not into first-person shooters, which will be most people playing your puzzle game, are going to quit.
Or if you describe your game as a puzzle game, but then throw in a Kaizo section, yeah, that doesn't work. And again, you have to be very careful about when you mix these elements. Think of it as, again, like, as a cooking metaphor, that you just don't throw every spice into your pie and it's going to turn out to be a brilliant dish. Even with the roguelike genre, think of rogue elements as think of it as like a habanero pepper, that you're not going to put 10 tons of roguelike elements that will magically make your game better. The best roguelike style games we've played feature very focused roguelike elements on them. And when you do it right, it makes the game better. If you just say that your game is 100% procedural generation, it's just going to be a maddening mess of a design.
Yeah, and Tim ran into that with his I forget the name of that game. Do you remember Tim's procedural generation spy game?
Something hacking, I think.
Yeah. But he ran into problems like that, not to mention problems with RNG, with just procedural generation as a whole, because like procedural generation is a hard thing to get right.
And don't get me started on RNG, because, RNG is easier to do. Everyone understands it, right?
Oh yeah, you just put random 1 through 10, and you're done. I mean, it's just simple as that. I mean, you can just code it in like
And
5, 6 letters.
90% always equals 100, right?
Oh yeah.
You never miss a 99% shot in XCOM, no.
No, never happens.
Hey, Mojo.
Not even
And
one.
to Blue Fox's comment, Rogue Wisdom's going to be my new channel. It'll be the underground game design lessons. Some people don't want you to know.
But which rogue is it?
Exactly. It's like a rogue.
You need to make like three different channels. You need to have the original Rogue Wisdom, the Rogue Light Wisdom, and the Rogue Like Wisdom.
There we go. Nobody will know what's on any of the shows. It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
But I think with that is a good time to endings for this week's show. That's the real rogue. So, we will be back next Sunday around 4:30 EDT. If you have any suggestions for topics for our shows, let us know in the comments. Be sure to join our respective Discord channels. You'll find links to them down below. And we'll be updating the topic of the week on my Discord channel momentarily with this week's topic about genre definitions.
And you can join my Discord and talk to me about anything game dev. Come in there, ask whatever questions. And, maybe I'll know the answers, maybe not. Maybe I'll know where to send you to find those answers. And, also be sure to sub to both Josh's YouTube channel, the Game Wisdom channel, and my YouTube channel, the Nexus Games LLC channel.
And I think with that, we will end things. So as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back later tonight for my regular game streams. And when do you do your stream, Shark?
I do my streams on Sundays with you. I do Friday dev streams where I stream my current game, making it. What's going to call Project Ride? It's got a name now, Neon Continuum. And on Tuesdays I stream games. Last week I just streamed some The Sky 4. The week before that I streamed some Final Upgrade. Started building a Death Star in that game, which is brutally awesome.
And I stream nightly around 9:30 EDT. And of course, we do game dev interviews when we can get the guests on. And you'll get updates and announcements about them if you join my Discord. But I think with that, we will be wrapping things up. Like I said, next week will be our topic about how good you have to be in a genre to get into it. And with that said, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games. And, Shark, do you have a catchphrase to end your stream with? Neon Continuum is not pay to win.
There we go. Neon Continuum is not pay to win.
There we go. All right, and again, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing on all of our channels. And until next time...
joining the Discords.
Yep. And until next time, have a great night.